Hey everybody, it's Mitch, and welcome to my next video. Today we have got another Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 video for you, and today, coming at you from the Player's Handbook, we're looking at the Druid, and more specifically, we're going to be looking at their Wildshape class feature. Now, Wildshape is a very interesting class feature. Basically, it lets you change forms. It is related to the alter form ability, I believe is what it's called, from the monster manual, but that's related to polymorph, the spell, which, depending on which version of the Player's Handbook you have, could reference either way. Now, let's talk about how this works, because this is really complicated, and there are some variations on the text depending on how old of a version of the book you have. Like I say, the oldest version says that it's like polymorph with a bunch of exceptions. The newer version will say that it's like, I think, alter self, yeah. But anyways, which when you look that up, it says it's like polymorph. It just sort of clarifies things. It doesn't really change anything. Also, the newer version specifies what happens to your armor and things like that you're wearing. It says that that will get consumed by your form and will return when you turn back to normal, but you don't get use of it while it's while it gets kind of consumed into your body as you change shape. So yeah, that's kind of an important detail on that. Now, one thing that's important to know, well, let's talk about first like what you're getting from it. So initially you can transform into small or medium animals, but as you level up in Druid, you gain the ability to go from anywhere from tiny to huge animals, as well as you gain access to a number of different types like Fae and plants and several other things. You also gain an elemental Wildshape, which is different. We're going to talk about that tier 2, but that is a separate Wildshape from your normal one. Yeah. There we go. Sorry, my image settings are all weird because of the light. So basically, what's happening with Wildshape is it's a pretty decent feature, quite powerful. Whenever you use it, you heal a number of hit points equal to your hit dice. So if you're 20th level, you'll gain 20 health. The original printing says a number of hit health as if you rested for a night, which that's how much it is. They just sort of clarify that in the later printings. On top of that, let's see. So things that you need to note when you transform, what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to cast spells, typically because you're not going to be able to make verbal and somatic components. Verbal components just aren't going to work because only humans can actually talk like humans normally, so that's going to be an issue regardless. Somatic components, that one's going to vary depending on which form you take. Most forms you're not going to be able to make them, but if you transform into like an ape or a monkey or something, then yeah, you'll be able to make somatic components just fine. They have very similar limbs to humans, so that's not an issue. But yeah, now if you want to get around that and still be able to spell cast natural spells, the easiest way to do that. I mean, you could also use still and silent spells, but honestly, natural spells just so much better because it lets you use animal gestures and sounds to replace the normal verbal and somatic components and have that work just fine. So much better. Just one feat instead of that doesn't increase level or anything. It just works instead of having to go the much more roundabout way of making your spells have no verbal or somatic components. So much easier to use natural spell. Very much an important feat to have if you plan to do any sort of spell casting while in Wildshape. Some other great feats that you can take The Complete Divine has a number of good ones, like Extra Wild Shape is quite nice. That one will give you 2 extra Wild Shape uses a day, and it will also give you 1 extra Elemental Wild Shape, which I forgot to talk about, so let's talk about that now real quick. So Elemental Wild Shape, it's a separate Wild Shape that you get separately from regular Wild Shape. This one will let you transform into elementals. And what's cool about this one is, unlike your normal Wild Shape, where you don't get you don't get any of the supernatural abilities, and you don't get you get like extraordinary attacks, but not extraordinary special abilities. With Elemental Wild Shape, you get all of that. You get basically everything, as well as their feats, and yeah, you gain a lot with the Elemental Wild Shape. It's kind of better, but it's a lot more limited. You only get a few uses of it per day. Initially 1, and then like up to 3. And it's a separate pool. It doesn't count from your regular Wild Shape pool. And both of them will last for a number of hours equal to your level of Druid. So that's pretty good. Yeah. So that's a really good one to get at 2 more regular Wild Shapes and 1 more Elemental, assuming you had at least 1 Elemental Wild Shape. If you can't an Elemental Wild Shape, then you don't get that. That's just how that works. But yeah, that's basically that feat. Now, another good one is I think it's called Fast Wild Shape. It's really nice. That one will let you Wild Shape as a move action instead of a standard action. So if you're going to be doing this during combat, it's definitely nice to be able to do that a little faster and not have to waste as much time. So that's useful. There's also a number of useful things that use up extra Wild Shapes, but give you some pretty interesting abilities. You should definitely check some of those out. Some of them are better than others for sure. But yeah, some of them are not bad. Another thing that's really nice is if you get, what was it? I think it's Wild Armor. It's really, really, really good. Well, it's quite good for a Druid. Basically what it does is it's a +2 enhancement bonus, and whenever you use Wild Shape, you can use a second Wild Shape in order to make your armor transform with you, so it doesn't get absorbed into your body and will just be like with you, on you, while you're in your new form, and you continue to gain the benefit of it. So you'll have higher AC and potentially fortification or whatever other abilities are on this. So that can be really nice and helpful. Although getting fortification is a little tricky because +2 enhancement for wild armor, but definitely a great armor to have to just get that nice extra AC bonus while in Wild Shape. So yeah, it does use up more uses, but I mean, it lasts so long that that's not a huge issue. Like, you can literally stay in Wild Shape all day once you get to high levels. Like, it's a number of hours per level, and you get you get multiple uses of it. So yeah, it's not something you need to be too restrictive of unless you're planning on changing between forms often. So yeah, pretty good one right there. That's mostly all I have on that. I mean, there's some prestige classes that are pretty good for that. Like, I know the Master of Many Forms. If you want to just focus on Wild Shape and not worry too much about spell casting, that's a really good option on that one. Get you a lot of advancement for Wild Shape, a lot of different options that you normally don't get. So pretty good there. On top of that, it's just a solid one all in all, but no spell casting. So that's if you want to go Wild Shape and not have to focus on that. But yeah, Wild Shape, great class feature, one of the Druid's better ones. They get a lot of really good stuff, in all honesty, and this one's pretty unique to the Druid, unlike a lot of their other things that they get, which are great, like Animal Companions. Rangers get those too, only half as good. Spell casting, there's a lot of different spellcasters out there. Druid spells are somewhat unique, but there's a lot of overlap between like wizards and sorcerers and all that. So Wildshape's the one thing that's really unique to them, at least in core. Once you start expanding out into other books, there's some other classes and prestige classes that can do similar stuff. But if you're sticking with core, not really. I mean, I guess you can just pick up the polymorph spell, but other than that, yeah. But that's mostly all I have for Druid Wildshape. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear from you. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving a like. I'd really appreciate that. Maybe subscribe to the channel for more D&D 3.5 content. But anyways, as always, I'm Mitch, and I'll be seeing you